I did see something, but it's gone. They took it from me. They erased it. You have to tell me what it was.
A military UFO? Mr. Mulder, why are those like yourself who believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life on this Earth not dissuaded by all the evidence to the contrary?
Because all the evidence to the contrary is not entirely dissuasive.
Precisely.
Yep. Well, we feel you, Fox. We're going to talk about the Wall Street Journal article. If you haven't heard about it, stay tuned because we're going to talk about it right now.
This is really Just Stop. Here's Ross, the host with today's dose of common sense.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Good to see you. Well, the Wall Street Journal did a thing where they just did an investigation, and they wrote up an article, and they said, this is what's really going on. And we'll talk about that today because it's quite a mess out there in UFO land today. But actually, yesterday is when it all started, I guess. So the Wall Street Journal did an investigation. They wanted to see what was going on for reals, for really reals, with this UAP flap that's happening. So some of their investigative reporters went out and started talking to sources and actually doing an actual investigation or an actual story on this. They came out with part one of their article. I don't know, there's going to be two parts, we know. Maybe more. But what happened was they discovered that the Pentagon was the one doing it. Okay, now we've talked about this before, about how the things that people see in the sky that they misidentify, a lot of them are just normal things, airplanes, helicopters, satellites that are reflecting the sunlight and things like that, things that people just don't understand, so they say it's a UFO. But there are also things up there that you can't explain because you've never seen anything like it before, and it doesn't mean it's aliens. It just means you haven't seen it before. So we have classified aircraft. We've talked about it numerous times on this podcast, at least. We've had classified, really space age spacecraft in our arsenal, in our inventory for decades now. Ever since World War II. World War II was a boon for engineering and design as far as aircraft and rocketry and missiles and things like that went. So, and then after the war, some of those Nazi scientists who were really, really good at those things came to the United States, and we used them, and they're the ones who put us on the moon. The British are really responsible for our first jet aircraft, our first jet fighter plane, because they loaned us one of theirs, and we studied it and figured out, how to make a jet engine for something like that, and we modified it. We did our own thing and started making the best fighter planes on the planet. We still do. But there have been things in our skies since the 50s that people don't know what they are. People aren't allowed to know what they are. So one thing that I've always been fascinated about, and this is kind of an aside, is back in the 50s, the United States Air Force had said that they had this ambition or this goal to create a craft that could take off like a regular airplane and then go up into the sky and achieve fast enough speed that it could exit the atmosphere under its own power and then come back. So we know that the Air Force has been trying to do that for a long time. They don't talk about it anymore, which has always made me think that, oh, they actually did it. I don't know if that's true or not, but they kind of stopped talking about that principle and that theory and that goal that they had of making a craft that can take off like a regular aircraft, go out of the atmosphere, do whatever it's going to do, and then come back under its own power without the need for booster rockets and all that stuff. So, and that was the ramjets and the scramjets and all these other things that they were inventing, trying to make that happen. And so the fact that we haven't heard anything like that in decades now kind of makes me think. It's always made me wonder if they actually accomplished that. And we just don't know about it, because there are a lot of things that we don't know out here in the civilian world. There's a lot of things that people in the military don't know. It's hard for me to explain this, but most of the people in the military don't even know what's in the military arsenal. They just don't. When they talked about the Bin Laden raid and the stealth Black Hawks and Zero Dark 30 movies and all that stuff. Those are things that had existed for quite a while. And the people in the military didn't know about it, except for the people who fly them or fly on them. And that would have been 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment and the Tier 1 units, the SMUs, like Delta Force and SEAL 6 and so on and so forth. So no one else needed to know about them. And we still wouldn't know about them if they didn't crash one. So they crashed the one, and the tail section was left, and there were photographs of it that were put out. So if that hadn't happened, we still wouldn't know that they had stealth Black Hawk helicopters and stealthy Chinook helicopters too, because nobody really talks about that one, but it wasn't just Black Hawks that were there. So there are other stealth aircraft that we're just not aware of, because even back in the 90s, they were showing them to us. They're taking them to air shows and stuff, which means they aren't even that critical anymore. So you have to assume that what's in the inventory today is far superior to what that is, to the B-2 Spirit and the F-117. The F-22 isn't even in production anymore. It's a 20-year-old aircraft now. And so if they aren't building more of them, it's because they don't need them, right? So what are they using instead? You're not going to know until they want you to know. So the Wall Street Journal goes around, starts talking to people, and they put out this article on the 6th. What's today? Today is the 7th. So yesterday at 9 p.m., they put this out. And the title of it is "The Pentagon Disinformation That Fueled America's UFO Mythology." So I'm going to see if I can pull this up, because now this is behind a paywall. This version of it is not. It was archived. I don't want to take credit for that because I didn't do it. But it was archived by someone else, and I shared it from Area 503, real Area 503. He's the one who posted it from the archive. I'm assuming he's the one who did it. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing it with us. But so I had nothing to do with it being archived and all of that, but you need to see it. So thanks to all the people for archiving it, making sure that it was available to people other than subscribers. I know, I'm sorry, Wall Street Journal, but this is kind of article, if you want to know the truth, I think this kind of article is a public interest article, and it shouldn't be behind a paywall. So they're doing that on purpose. They're just putting it behind a paywall because they know there's so many people are going to want to read it. So, then they're going to offer them this, oh, look, $1 a month for the first year, blah, blah, blah. And they're going to get a whole bunch of people to sign up and be members so they can get money from them every year, which is fine. That's what's, that's what journalism is really about. You got to sell papers, you got to sell subscriptions and stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to go broke. And that's no fun for anybody. So hooray, capitalism. Good job. Keep going. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I am going to just kind of paraphrase some of this. And what it's telling us is that the Pentagon, yes, was running a disinformation program, and they were using UFOs as cover for other stuff. And that's long been understood within the military and the civilian ufology and all that. They've long known this because there are known instances of disinformation being pushed into the UFO community. People even wrote books based on disinformation that they were given by government agents about the Roswell incident and other things. So the UFO community is well aware that the government uses disinformation to keep people guessing and to, confuse our adversaries and our own people. And it keeps everybody guessing. And it also keeps them looking somewhere else. While we're doing something over here with the left hand, they're going, look at the right hand over here. It's a glowing orb in the sky. And then people are doing documentaries about these glowing orbs in the sky when they're ignoring the fact that they have these giant V-shaped balloons that can go up into the stratosphere or whatever. And people accidentally saw them in Phoenix. And, because that's my understanding, that's actually what happened. But it was a government contractor's, craft they were experimenting with, and it got loose. So they aren't just doing that. They are intentionally fooling people in the military as well. That's kind of the major thing that this article is revealing, is that they're lying to their own people. The Pentagon is lying to their own people. Now, I have a theory, and my theory is when people have clearances and people are around them all the time, and you go through your periodic reviews and all that stuff, your polygraphs, and they're going to have a pretty good understanding of you as a person. So it's quite possible that this is directed at people who they assume have some sort of predisposition to blab things. And you've heard John Lear say that about the Bob Lazar story also. He said that he was told some of that stuff because they knew he would talk. So it's possible that they flag people and they're like, this guy runs his mouth too much. He's eventually going to tell somebody something that he's not supposed to. So let's tell him a bunch of stuff that he if he releases it, people will think he's nuts. And apparently they've done that. They have created NDAs and everything. They've exposed them to this information, made them sign a non-disclosure agreement, and sent them on their way. And then they may never see anything about it again, but then that's going to sit in the back of their head. And there's a certain type of person who's going to tell people. And I don't know, maybe they have a way of identifying those people ahead of time. And so they feed them this disinformation, because that way, if this person ever starts talking, everybody's just going to disregard them as being kind of crazy. So some of the things they reveal, if they become a whistleblower, might actually be real, but it's going to be encompassed in this whole discussion of things that aren't real. And then people will just, like they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. And it's a pretty good system, really, if you think about it. It's going to be pretty effective, and it's going to discourage other whistleblowers too, because you're going to have someone making a fool of themselves in front of Congress or on television, on the radio, on podcasts. And anybody who's considering being a whistleblower about something similar is going to see what happens to those people, the ridicule that they go through, the career suicide that they're basically committing, and the fact that they're never going to get another job in government or another job that requires a security clearance, and pretty much they just threw their life away because they believed aliens were at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base or whatever. So it's going to discourage other people from becoming whistleblowers, because now they're like, is what I know real? Or did they feed me some disinformation? in the film Mirage Men, that was really about Richard Doty, who, he's a dick. My understanding is that nobody likes him, but he said that he was part of a disinformation campaign, and there's a person who eventually was ruined by the whole thing. He was driven crazy. But Doty also said that he was shown information and he was told that extraterrestrials were real, that they had been visiting here. Here's some pictures of UFOs. Here's your non-disclosure agreement, etc. He said that in that documentary. And that is going to be to just make him seem crazy, really. But this lines up with what he said in that documentary. And there are some people who are going to say that that was intentional disinformation. There was like a weird thing about this documentary. I thought it was a pretty good documentary. I thought it was made very well. I don't know how much of it's true. I didn't bother researching it myself. But the fact that he said that several years ago, and now the Pentagon is saying, oops, we did that, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting on it, it just kind of adds some credibility to what Doty was saying in that documentary, that even himself, as an OSI special agent, was fed disinformation. And whether or not he believed it or not, who knows, but that's what they did. So that's the big takeaway from this. And one of the blurbs was, the Pentagon went looking for who was behind this UFO flap and figured out that it was actually them. They were the ones doing it. But it's quite lengthy, and you should read it. You can find it on the internet. It's, it's out there. You just kind of have to search for it, or go to my X page and click on, Area 503's link that I put up there. But the one thing that I thought was really fascinating about this piece, in this one, I'm really looking forward to the second half, but I'm going to read part of this. Let's see. This is about a person. This is a fairly well-known story, and it involved the bunkers where they have the intercontinental ballistic missiles, or nukes, out in the Montana, frontier. And people work out there, and they're the people who care for and potentially launch these things in the event of, a national emergency or a nuclear attack. Well, Robert Salas, he's now 84 years old, but in 1967, he was an Air Force captain. He was in a walk-in closet-sized bunker manning the controls of 10 nuclear missiles in Montana. Now, the story goes, UFOs appeared in the sky, zapped the bunkers, and all of the instrumentation went dead. Like the power shut off to the whole thing. And it took about 10 minutes for everything to boot back up and for them to regain control of stuff. That's the general story from UFO lore. And this person swears by it. And I have no reason to doubt this person, especially now that they put this out. Because he was prepared to launch apocalyptic strikes should the Soviet Russia ever attack first. I'm having trouble reading today. He got a call around 8 p.m. one night from the guard station. A glowing reddish-orange oval was hovering over the front gate. Salas told Kirkpatrick's investigators. Kirkpatrick was the guy in charge of ARROW, the All Domain Anomalous Resolution Office. So he went out and interviewed all these people. The guards had their rifles drawn, pointed at the oval object, appearing to float above the gate. A horn sounded in the bunker, signaling a problem with the control system. All 10 missiles were disabled. Salas soon learned a similar event occurred in other silos nearby. Were they under attack? Salas never got an answer. The next morning, a helicopter was waiting to take Salas back to base. Once there, he was ordered never discuss the incident. He was one of 5 men interviewed by Kirkpatrick's team who witnessed such events in the 60s and 70s. While sworn to secrecy, the men began sharing their stories in the 90s in books and documentaries. In other words, they violated their oath, they violated their NDAs, and they started flapping their yaps, as my folks used to say. Kirkpatrick's team dug into the story and discovered a terrestrial explanation. The barriers of concrete and steel surrounding America's nuclear missiles were thick enough to give them a chance if hit first by a Soviet strike. But scientists at the time feared the intense storm of electromagnetic waves generated by a nuclear detonation might render the hardware needed to launch a counterstrike unusable. Now, they're talking about an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which is one of the things that happens during a nuclear explosion, nuclear detonation. So the article goes on, to test this vulnerability, the Air Force developed an exotic electromagnetic generator. An electromagnetic generator that simulated this pulse of disruptive energy without the need to detonate a nuclear weapon. What they are telling you is that they've had EMP weapons since the 60s. Who knew? I didn't. When activated, this device, placed on a portable platform 60 feet above the facility, would gather power until it glowed, sometimes with a blinding orange light. It would then fire a burst of energy that could resemble lightning. Now, there's a diagram for those of you who are listening and aren't watching on YouTube. There's a diagram of the thing, and inverse cones and bicones, and it doesn't look like anything to me. It doesn't explain anything about how it's powered or what it does. It's just some sort of a weird picture. And this may, let's see, the structure starts at the end of the bicone with a diameter. It's an inverse cone structure. It's not really describing what's going on, unless that's, I don't know, that's the shape of the thing, or the waves that are emitted are shaped like that. I don't know. I'm not going to get too deep into it. So the electromagnetic pulses snaked down cables connected to the bunkers where launch commanders like Salas sat, disrupting the guidance systems, disabling the weapons, and haunting the men to this day. But any public leak of the tests at the time would have allowed Russia to know that America's nuclear arsenal could be disabled in a first strike. The witnesses were kept in the dark. To this day, Salas believes he was party to an intergalactic intervention to stop nuclear war, which the government has tried to hide. He's half right. The experiment left the octogenarian deeply skeptical of the U.S. military and its ability to tell the truth. Quote, "There's a gigantic cover-up, not only by the Air Force, but every other federal agency that has cognizance of this subject," he said, unquote. He said in an interview with the Journal, quote, "We were never briefed on the activities that were going on. The Air Force shut us out of any information," end quote. Well, yes, because obviously you wouldn't keep your mouth shut because you're out there telling this story a couple of decades later. So the Air Force was right in not telling you what actually went on, because obviously you weren't capable of keeping your mouth shut about it. So now, if he actually knew what was going on and he knew this wasn't an alien invasion and he had a scientific explanation and they could show him what happened, maybe he would have kept his mouth shut. Maybe he would have obeyed his NDA and, his superiors and just never talked about it. Who knows? But since he wasn't sure what happened, he had no idea what happened. It just ate at him, and so he was going to go talk. But they're explaining what they did. And this would be something that this is the first time it's ever been discussed. So I've been hearing these stories since I was a kid in the 70s. So these stories about UFOs can knock out our nuclear arsenal. There's an entire book written on that subject that talks about all the things that have happened around nuclear weapons, bunkers and things like that. And nuclear power, I believe. It's called UFOs and Nukes, I think is the name of the book. It's actually the title of the book. I haven't read it, but the fact that we could do that back then fascinates me, because electromagnetic pulses are kind of the answer to a whole lot of problems. satellite disruption, taking out aircraft, taking out missiles, rocket systems. You don't even have to shoot it down. You just have to fly by it and poof, EMP it. And all of a sudden, the command and control thing inside the missile doesn't work anymore. Or, I don't know, an airplane or anything else, or a satellite. Just kind of move your satellite close enough to it and poof, their satellite doesn't work anymore. But there was a mention not too long ago that the Chinese have developed satellites that have like arms on them, and they can go grab other satellites and move them. So our satellites are really at risk. The Chinese are really weaponizing space, and we're not supposed to be doing that. There's a treaty and everything. We're not supposed to be weaponizing space. But people are, and that doesn't mean we aren't, but we're not supposed to be doing that. Just so you know. But fascinating thing. And the article, intrigues me. I can't wait for the next one to come out, because this is exactly what people have been saying for a long, long time. And it's just the true believers who they refuse. I mean, people already have on what's been released so far. They're already saying, oh, this article in and of itself is government disinformation, yada, yada, yada. And it's just skeptics, actual researchers, investigators, people in the know have been coming out and saying this is what's been going on for a very long time. But you have the true believers who won't take it as gospel. They'll just say, no, that's not true. And there's some people who you're never going to convince. They're always just going to come away from this going, yeah, that's just the government lying again, because that's what they do. So aliens actually did come down and they landed at this place, and that's exactly what happened because the government is denying it. So obviously that's really what happened. Otherwise the government would be telling us the truth. Well, they're trying to tell you the truth, and you're just refusing to answer or refusing to accept it. And it's kind of sad, but it doesn't surprise me that that's what's been going on, because people have talked about it for a long, long time. And it's been obvious in some cases. But I remember a case when I was really young. I don't know how old I was, but I was a lot younger than I am now. And there was something crashed, I believe in Pennsylvania. And there was a whole UFO story about it. And government vehicles and the military went and they retrieved this thing, and it was obviously it had to be a UFO with alien bodies in it, or otherwise they wouldn't have responded to this thing that way, and all that other stuff. And a few years went by, and it was revealed that it was actually a satellite that crashed to the Earth, and it wasn't one of ours. It was a Soviet satellite. So they made a big deal of, we've got to go find this satellite and retrieve it and figure out what kind of technology they have in it. And so that's what happened. So they weren't going to tell you that. They just weren't gonna. They weren't going to tell you that. So they're going to let you believe what you want to believe. People are going to start making up stories, conjecture, fantasy, that sort of thing. Crazy people will get involved, and they'll add to the story, and it becomes this gigantic myth. And the government's not going to come out and tell you no. I mean, sometimes they will. They'll just say, no, that wasn't aliens. But you're not going to believe it because you already distrust the government. So you're not going to believe what they tell you, even if what they're telling you is the truth. So they've sort of shot themselves in the foot that way by being so involved in like disinformation and stuff like that, things that we've known they've been doing for decades. But now nobody's going to believe them at all, even when they're telling the truth. So that's kind of the position they've put themselves in. But it's a fascinating article. I'm looking forward to part 2 at least. I don't know if there's going to be more than 2 parts, but fascinating. Today I learned something that I didn't know before, and that was this experiment with the nuclear bunkers, or the launch sites. So it's a story I had never heard about as far as what actually happened and what they were doing. So I don't know if that story was already out there, if anybody already knew that, but I didn't. So to me, it was pretty cool to learn that. Everything else in the article was pretty much assumed by me anyway, and a whole bunch of other people. So the skeptics are having a great day today on social media, and the true believers, the Fox Mulders in the crowd, not so much, but they are making excuses, and they're not going to believe it anyway. The Wall Street Journal just got written off as disinformation, a shill for the government. And the two authors are going to be targeted. And why are you lying to the people and all that other stuff? And who got to you? And how much did they pay you to do this? And I feel sorry for them, but hey, them's the breaks, kid. But yeah, it's fascinating. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you'll go out there and find it and read it yourself. And you won't be, swayed by the true believers. One of these days, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about how they keep mingling religion and ufology and things like that. The things that are going on today is quite troubling to me. And I'm trying to find a guest to come on and discuss it with me. But you know what? Nobody wants to come on my little podcast. I've asked a couple of people. They didn't even respond to my DMs. So thanks, guys, supporters. Thank you. Appreciate it. But yeah, I asked 3 or 4 people, and they just never even responded to my direct messages on X. So, I'm small time. Nobody wants to come play with me. But I will talk to you guys again soon, and we're going to discuss some more of this. When the second piece of this article, or whatever other pieces of it come out, we'll discuss that as well. And I'm sure somebody will archive it on the internet, so it's not behind a paywall for you. So take care. And don't believe everything you're told. And, eat your vegetables and stuff.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Really? Just Stop with your host, Ross. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a dose of some common sense.